Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's my number 18 team in my 2024 NFL Deep Dive series. It's the Minnesota Vikings. Make sure to leave a like and a comment in the comment section below so you don't miss any of the future videos. Subscribe, help out with those numbers. We're doing really well. I'm really enjoying this series. I'm enjoying some of the interactions there with a lot of you guys, and this one I think should have some discussion because there is a lot of things here in this team that to be excited about. There's a lot of things in this team to be worried about. There's a lot of things to praise and a lot of things to criticize. It's a very, very interesting team to look at. They have arguably the best receiver in the NFL. They have one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. They have one of the more, I would say, innovative yet somehow still questionable head coaches in Kevin O'Connell. We'll get to my assessment on him and why I'm very hot and cold on the guy. I like him, but I'm not overly convinced. I don't really know where to rank him, but I did, and you guys are probably going to hate it. This Viking fans are going to hate it, but hopefully I'm able to explain myself throughout this as to why I feel the way that I feel. There is an offense with a almost unlimited level of talent on it. Great receivers, great tight ends, a running back room that's not going to blow people away, maybe like people think, in terms of name value, like Aaron Jones. We'll see how that sort of works out. I think Aaron Jones will be a lot more of a contributor in the passing game, more so than the run game. I think they got some good depth for early down backs. We'll get to those. The only question mark on the offense is the quarterback. It's Sam Darnold from the looks of it right now, but they did draft J.J. McCarthy, who I was very high on in the draft process, my quarterback 2, and that caused a crap storm on some of my mock drafts with some people, especially on the My Guy mock draft that I did. But whatever, it is what it is. I think J.J. McCarthy's a great player. We'll get to that as well. Defense side of the ball, they really kind of revamped everything. Again, be remiss. Saw it there at the top. Kyrie Jackson. Yikes. Very sad. For purposes of the deep dive, didn't really change the starter rankings for me. He was sort of coming in for me as would have been about the number 4. He did change up the depth grade, but that doesn't contribute to the overall ranking. That's more just sort of, hey, this is what I think of the depth players. I do think that the upside of the overall cornerback room does take a dive with that tragedy. Did really well in the draft overall. Really well in free agency. Van Ginkel, Cashman. I really like those signings. How they use Josh Metellus throughout the year is going to be very fun to watch, but we need to start with the most confusing part of this deep dive for me, which was the coaching staff. So let's start here with the coaching staff, and this is one that falls right down the middle for me. Kevin O'Connell, I got him as the 17th ranked head coach here. It's a real tight race, admittedly, between probably the 17th head coach, like Kevin O'Connell, all the way up into like that 13th, 12th area. It's really difficult to decipher between those coaches, and like there's so many good head coaches in the NFL. So I don't want Viking fans to think that I'm picking on Kevin O'Connell here. I'm not exactly super high on Kevin O'Connell. I wouldn't put him in the top 10, but I wouldn't be upset if people had him as like the 13th or 12th ranked head coach in the NFL. He's done a pretty good job. Now, this is the first time where he's actually going to have to take a quarterback that is either, needs a complete career revitalization like Sam Darnold, or develop a young quarterback who has some traits to him, who maybe needs to develop some more traditional pro style aspects of his game in J.J. McCarthy. So that's going to be the real task for him. A lot of turnover in terms of some veteran presences here. So it really is a much different environment than Kevin O'Connell has had in the past here with the Vikings. And that doesn't take anything away from him. I think that it's just the true test of Kevin O'Connell's ability is really going to be this season, and how well things sort of come together here. He's working hand in hand with Wes Phillips, the offensive coordinator. You might recognize that name. I do believe he is the son of what's his face? Phillips, the defensive coordinator. Why is his name escaping me? I just had it. Wade Phillips. Jesus. Come on. Get it together. He's been coaching a long time. He's been the offensive coordinator, I believe, the entire time Kevin O'Connell has been there. Came over after being the pass game coordinator and tight ends coach for the Rams when they won that Super Bowl. He's a decent compliment to Kevin O'Connell, but I think he sort of suffers from the same issues that I have with O'Connell. Is just now this is the true test. He doesn't have Kirk Cousins, who's a ready-made player. So that's a lot. That's a lot to, seeing how these quarterbacks develop, I think is really going to be a true testament to where these guys would be ranked by the end of the year by me as comparison to here at the beginning of the year. But one guy there, Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator, I don't have too many question marks about him. He is such a great defensive coach. I sort of liken him to 15 years ago what the league had in Mike Singletary, where he was such a great defensive coach that he had to get a head coaching job at some point. He got it with the 49ers, and he completely flipped the entire culture of what was a failing organization at that time. And then, boom, in comes Jim Harbaugh, and he's the one that took him over the top. I compare Brian Flores to that a lot with what he did in Miami, where he came in and he completely changed the entire culture of that team that was very much on a downward trend. They had a couple good years with Jay Fiedler and stuff, and they had like one good year with Chad Pennington, but there wasn't a lot of consistency there. And then Brian Flores came in and he really raised he picked the nose up on the diving plane that was that organization. He just didn't have much like Singletary. There was just something missing in his ability to take that team to the next level. And then you see it here with Mike McDaniel in Miami, where he sort of came in and now he's taken that Miami team from, a solid, hard-nosed team to now throwing in his mixture, taking what Brian Flores built and taking it to the next level, making them a contender. I love Brian Flores in this role where he can just focus on the defense, and I think this combination could end up being really, really great for this team. Just the way Brian Flores, game plans a defense, the way he uses different players in different spots. He came from the Belichick tree, so there's a lot of guys who are quote-unquote positionless when they're on the field. You'll have guys who are traditional defensive ends who are playing, an off-ball linebacker spot. You'll have defensive tackles playing defensive end. You'll have safeties coming down playing linebacker or outside, or like a 3-4 outside linebacker type role. There's so many different variations of what they'll do, and it makes it very hard to game plan for them. Now, teams caught on to the Brian Flores defense as the season went on last year, which is where Minnesota sort of dipped in their defensive production. But now you've given him a whole new offseason. He's going to be able to do some more things. So I think at least at the beginning of the year, the first half of the season, I expect Minnesota's defense, despite the losing of some of their mainstay veterans, the additions of some of these other pieces in here, I expect their defense to be great early in the year. Now, how that adjustments are made by Flores that he really didn't make last year, how he maybe can turn that around, make them this year, could take him into like that top 5 defensive coordinator ranking for me. But for now, just because of that little detail, those in-season adjustments that just didn't happen, I have to kind of punish Brian Flores for it. And I think that's where Kevin O'Connell kind of loses some of his ranking as well, because at the end of the day, you're the head coach. And even though you're an offensive head coach like O'Connell is, you're still responsible for everything. Offense, defense, special teams. So you need to have your finger on the pulse of all that. You need to be pushing for certain changes, certain adjustments throughout games, throughout seasons. You can't just hand something over to another coach and wash your hands of it. That's not your job. That's Wes Phillips' job, to be honest. Wes Phillips' job is just to focus on the offense. That's his only responsibility. Kevin O'Connell needs to be a little bit more hands-on with the defense, and maybe just a little bit more of him being involved with the defense could help them mid-season the way it really didn't help them last season. Now, I don't know how involved Kevin O'Connell is in defensive strategizing from week to week, but I would say a little bit more. Don't allow Brian Flores to get such tunnel vision the way that he did last year, where they ended up getting caught in certain situations that kind of cost them down the line. Now let's get to the players, and this is the only question mark I got on this team, is the quarterback. We know Sam Darnold's going to be the one that comes in. He's going to be the starter. I think J.J. McCarthy is the better player. I think he's the better player out the gate. I'm much higher on J.J. McCarthy than a lot of people were. He was my quarterback too coming into this draft. People hated it. It is what it is, but I really loved what J.J. McCarthy brought, but this is about Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's going to get a majority of the first team reps, as already announced. He has a chance here to revitalize his career, but he really hasn't shown anything as a professional quarterback that leads me to believe that this is going to be anything positive. Now, J.J. McCarthy, to me, he's shown it, and just based upon who his influences have been. You got to remember, I brought this up during the draft cycle. His only influence as a college quarterback has been Jim Harbaugh. J.J. McCarthy blew people away in the pre-draft process. That's why he went as high as he did. You can say, he was the fifth quarterback off the board. That's virtually irrelevant to me, because I'm looking at him and I'm going, he wasn't asked to do a lot, granted, at Michigan, but when he was asked to do things, he was executing it in ways that Sam Darnold as a pro hasn't shown. An example, we'll talk about third and mediums to third and long situations. I mean, this kind of was the narrative that ended up out there that I think helped McCarthy's, the perspective of him, was that people were like, he just turns around and has the ball off. Those third and eights and longer, J.J. McCarthy had the highest travel distance of a pass on those plays. So he wasn't dumping it off to Blake Corum or Donovan Edwards and letting them do all the work and get the first downs. He was throwing that ball downfield to his receivers, to his tight ends, etc., to get those third downs. He was making really smart choices. He was protecting the ball. He was able to scramble when he needed to. And that's why I'm looking at Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is just not doing those things at the professional level. He's not throwing the ball down the field in those situations. He's doing a lot of safe, dumping the ball off when he's even been on the field. But it's a lot of dumping the ball off. His downfield work is just not good. His processor really hasn't caught up to the NFL level despite what has been preached about him. And frankly, spoiler alert, if it wasn't for the lack of play time last year due to injury that Anthony Richardson got, then there wouldn't be a tied for last right now. He would just be last, coming in as the worst starter in the league. J.J. McCarthy, if he was starting, he'd be he'd be like 22nd probably, I think, for me, coming in 23rd, somewhere around there. It would be much better than this, that's for sure. And I think it would raise up the offense just a little bit. I think it would help the offense just a little bit. I don't think this is they significantly lose anything in their ranking having Sam Darnold as the starter. I think that it does lower the floor for what this offense could be, but I don't think it significantly raises the ceiling, because I think that just the way that this offensive system is probably going to be set up this year based upon who they have at quarterback and the lack of experience of J.J. McCarthy and probably the lack of ability in Sam Darnold, that the system's really going to be tailored in a way where you won't need to worry about the quarterbacks screwing this up for you. I think that's why they get this ranking that they do, and you'll see what their overall offensive ranking is later. I think the system's really going to help with that, and because of the other players they have around them, this really was the perfect situation to drop in J.J. McCarthy or any other rookie quarterback because of what they have surrounding them on this offense. So here are the rush threats, and they're 27th in the NFL with Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. I think here on early downs, we're going to see a lot of the splitting of the carries. I think there's going to be a lot more of a 1-2 punch than maybe people are projecting early on with this group. You know, Aaron Jones, you're not guaranteed a full season here. Ty Chandler really came on in a lot of situations there late in the year. And I think having him as a number 2 is really a great situation for them to be in. I think it increases his ranking here and his overall rating because of that role. I think if he was in a situation where he was really going to have to be the bell cow back, it would have hurt his rating for me. Aaron Jones, again, you don't really know if he can stay healthy for a year, but you've also got a decent group here at least. You know, you got Dwayne McBride there and Myles Gaskins and 2 other guys who can contribute on these early downs. But what you really like about Aaron Jones is his ability as a receiving back. I have him tied for 13th. Again, health stuff sort of comes into play here. Green Bay did just walk away from him. You know, there's a lot of red flags when a team just walks away from a guy who is perceived to be a really great player, and that there's a lot of struggle in figuring out who's going to be bringing him in. And then, you know, Minnesota jumped on it because they did need a number 1 back, and I think that he is truly a number 1 back. I just believe that in this situation, this is where he's really going to shine in this offense, especially with the quarterback situation. I think he's going to be set up to really succeed here in the passing game more than anything else. So I would expect guys like Ty Chandler and Dwayne McBride to maybe be more contributors here on early downs for those reasons. Is because you kind of want to save Aaron Jones for, you know, these passing situations. Now, granted, I still think Aaron Jones, when it comes to the amount of carries, the overall carries that the running backs get, I could see him getting upwards of 55 to 60% of the carries this year. Ty Chandler, I think, will get a really good workload, and then you'll see the rest of the guys sort of contribute here. But I think in terms of running backs catching the ball out of the backfield, going out and running some routes, I think Aaron Jones is going to eat up probably about 80-something to 90% of those snaps in any given week. I think that that's where a lot of his work is going to be. I think he's a great mismatch out there for linebackers and safeties and nickelbacks and all that. I think he's a pretty underrated contributor in picking up blitzes when he has to stay in, you know, max protection, all that. You wonder how often that's going to happen. I think there's going to be a lot of play action that's going to come off of a lot of play action is going to come from this offense. So maybe he won't so much be outrunning complicated routes as he'll be, you know, fake handoff, chip a player coming through, run out into the flats for a route, take a hook zone there in between underneath a linebacker, some type of situation like that, which may not be the absolute best usage of his skill set, but it will serve, I think, really strong in this offense. And I do expect him to be, by the end of the season, among one of the higher ranked, statistically at least, receiving backs in the NFL. If he can manage to keep his health in check. I think Dwayne McBride is a real dark horse for this running back room. I think what you're going to get out of him is a lot of early down work. I think as the season goes on, I could see him getting more and more carries in these situations. I would even project that in the event you lose an Aaron Jones, for example, for a game or two, Dwayne McBride, I would think, would come in. I think he would take a majority of the carries in those games, and Ty Chandler would sort of maintain his role as like that number 2 early down back, and then almost directly take over as the receiving back, because that's just not something Dwayne McBride is going to be doing at all. I was very high on Dwayne McBride coming out. I thought he was going to be a really good contributor to this team. I thought with a little bit of time, he could be a great early down back. But clearly this offense wants some more dynamic ability in the pass game, some more speed out there, which is why you bring in Aaron Jones instead of just going with a Ty Chandler, Dwayne McBride backfield. So I understand the motivations here in this. But overall, this is probably about a middle of the pack, just inside the top 20 running back room for all the things they're going to contribute. But they are going to be expected to do a lot this year because of, again, the quarterback situation coming in. Moving on to the wide receiver room, and we have the number 6 wide receiver room in the NFL. This is one heck of a group for a quarterback to inherit. This is why I'm talking about this might be the perfect situation for a quarterback to come into, because you're getting arguably almost guaranteed the number 1. If he's not number 1, he's number 2 wide receiver in the NFL, Justin Jefferson. He can play every position as a wide receiver, inside, outside, all things, run all the routes, great separator, great run after the catch. Great contestant. He's everything. He is everything. He gets a 98 grade for me. Jordan Addison. Now, there is the whole drunk driving thing with Jordan Addison. Personally, I feel it's a little bit blown out of proportion here. He was found sleeping in his car on like the side of the highway or something. To me, what that looks like is somebody who had a night out, who left feeling good, who went, oh, I'm not drunk. I had a couple drinks, whatever. I'm good. Started driving and all of a sudden realized I'm not feeling that great and pulled over, turned the car off and went to bed and sobered up. Instead of continuing to drive the car more, instead of even attempting, he pulled over to where it was safe, put the blinkers on, fell asleep, was hoping to wake up in the morning sober, ready to go. And people are just mad at him over it. And I understand why they would be because of the Kyrie Jackson thing with this team. I get that. But also, it's one of those situations where I think a lot of people have been in that scenario where you could leave the restaurant, you leave the bar, and you're walking to the car. And the closer you get to the car, the worse you start to feel. And then maybe you sit down, and you're about to turn the car on, and you're like, you know what? I think I am a little bit more drunk than I thought I was. And then you hand the keys off to somebody else who's sober, and then they decide, they're driving. Or you leave the car there and you take an Uber home. There's a lot of different possibilities there. I wouldn't be surprised if that just happened to him mid-drive. That's not out of the realm of possibility, and I think that some type of assessment here will be made. I'm sure he'll get suspended. If they throw the book at him, that'll be pretty disappointing. But he is a great number 2. Talk to him about as a player now, not necessarily what he does in his personal life. He's a great number 2 in this situation. He's a high-end number 2 in this league. Perfect compliment for Justin Jefferson. He did a great job replacing Jefferson when he was injured last year. As the team's number 1 receiver, he filled those shoes quite well, actually. And then that's what raised the entire passing game up once Justin Jefferson comes back. And now, Sam Darnold's going to have an opportunity to use these guys as long as he's willing to throw the ball down the field, of course. Brandon Powell's their number 3. I think it's a good situation for him to be in as a number 3. He's like a middle of the pack number 3 for me. You even get to some of the depth. Trent Sheffield came in. He's going to be competing for snaps with Brandon Powell. I got N'Keal Harry there. I know he's been working out at tight end too. I think as a receiver, he's still going to, be looked at as one at least a little bit. He can still possibly make the team, being able to do both things. It's a tough depth road for some of this wide receiver room. I think outside the top 4, you're not really looking at a whole lot out of this wide receiver room. When you get to the tight end, again, another great situation, especially for quarterback J.J. McCarthy, is you got the 3rd best tight end in the league, T.J. Hawkinson. He gets a 94 grade from me. You see N'Keal Harry mentioned in there as well. He gets a 60 there. It's a slight boost just because of the matchup issues that'll come with it. linebackers and safeties covering him as opposed to traditional cornerbacks, I think will help him. I don't know how significant that helps him. But TJ Hawkinson, I think he's a great all-around tight end. They got Johnny Munt who came over from the Rams. Just sort of fits into the system. He's a great complement at number 2. Josh Oliver's a great blocking tight end for them. Robert Tonyan is that veteran presence that they have. I don't know how long he's going to be there. He's sort of just beat up at this point. But when you give this type of weaponry to any quarterback, it's kind of hard to screw it up. It really is. We saw Kirk Cousins have a lot of good years. He's looking like, MVP caliber play if he was able to stay healthy the last couple seasons. So putting in, Sam Darnold, you hope that Sam Darnold, you're able to put together a scheme that he's not going to be able to screw up. Maybe he gets a little bit of confidence, gets it rolling a bit until J.J. McCarthy's ready to step in. And this is a ready-built weaponry group where he's going to be able to throw the ball all 3 levels down the field. And we know he's not afraid to do it. Just because he didn't have to do it, he's not going to be afraid to do it. You're going to have Jefferson running every route. You have Jordan Addison beating people over the top. And then you're going to have TJ Hawkinson working in those underneaths. And even being able to get downfield, being able to win jump balls in the red zone, being that type of a threat. This just has all the makings for a really effective passing game for Minnesota. And when you get a coach like Kevin O'Connell with the scheme that they like to run, this is as good of a group as you can find out there for that type of offense. And on top of that, they're going to get amazing protection. Tied for 4th here for pass blocking ranking. We'll start with Christian Darrisaw, who is just an amazing player in this league. He is so great at all aspects. He might be the most complete tackle in the league right now. He's not the best pass blocker. He's not the best run blocker, but he can execute in all aspects of the game. He is by far the best lineman on the team. And he really helps raise up everybody else around him. His complement, Brian O'Neill, nothing to be sneezed at there. Brian O'Neill, he's one of the best right tackles in the league as well. And have those 2 guys at tackle and combine it with the weapons, it's just a fantastic situation to be in. Then you got Dalton Reisner, a great veteran here. Garrett Bradbury, a serviceable, didn't really ever get back to that peak that he had earlier in his career. But he's sort of regressed down to maybe the 15th best center in the league, which I don't see anything necessarily wrong with that. Having the 20th to 15th best center in the league when you got these 2 tackles, when you got Dalton Reisner, even Ed Ingram, who by no means, he's the worst offensive lineman you have, and he's not even that bad compared to some of the guys that we've seen and covered so far in this series. This is a great group, and it's going to allow them to run an offense. It's going to give Sam Darnold time. It's probably the best offensive line Sam Darnold's ever played behind. And that's, that isn't saying a whole lot, but it's saying a lot. You get to some of the depth here for pass blocking. They got some great depth here too. Walter Rouse, Doug Nestor, the rookies, Michael Juergens, a rookie center, Jeremy Flax, rookie interior lineman. They drafted really well. They picked up some really good guys off the street there as undrafted free agents, at least for the pass blocking aspect. They got a good foundation to build off of for this aspect of their game. David Quessenberry, a veteran there. He's pretty much a swing offensive lineman. He's probably going to be your O-lineman 6 who's going to come in, play some guard, play some tackle, replacement level type of a guy. Dan Feeney, even though by my estimation, he's the worst guy on the roster, I think his veteran presence is really going to help him. And again, positional flexibility. Though I do think Michael Juergens could surprise people and be that number 2 center. Then you got Quessenberry. Blake Brandel is going to be competing for a spot there. Again, these rookies, they're very hot and cold in terms of their abilities, which you'll see once we get to the run blocking. But we'll start with the starters. They do take a dip here to 23rd. See Christian Darrisaw, he still gets a 79 rating as a run blocker. That's still a really good rating. Same thing with Brian O'Neill, 74. Garrett Bradbury gets a 72. You worry about the 2 guards in run blocking, which unfortunately is a significant part of the run blocking. Dalton Risner, Ed Ingram. This is not something that they do really well. Ed Ingram is a lot closer to being a more even-keeled guard compared to Dalton Risner, especially at this point in Risner's career. But I think that you can create a system that really hides some of these deficiencies like you see in San Francisco, like you've seen with the Rams over the years. That'll help this run game become a lot more serviceable down the road. Then you get to the depth, and this is where you kind of start to struggle. Michael Juergens, I put him up there. I think that's a steal of a player. I think if he can develop some better pass blocking, he could be somebody who they could look to be the center next year, and they just cut tie. So getting to positional summaries here, and the quarterback is really the weak spot. The wide receiver, tight end blocking is really good. You worry about about the run blocking and the depth for the run blocking, but the overall offensive line, you're getting like top quality offensive line play here, especially in that passing game. The weapons are great. It's got all the workings for a really good offense that if a quarterback takes off, watch out. It could be easily a top 5 offense by the end of the season. But for now, they are ranked 13th offense in the NFL, 13th passing offense. They are 23rd in rush offense. But as that quarterback in the passing game develops and rises up, that will raise the entire offense. So you could, like I said, if Sam Darnold really catches on there, all you really need out of the quarterback situation here is give me the 20th best quarterback in the NFL, and you're operating easily as a top 10 offense. I think the skills positions are that strong. Now moving over to the defensive side of the ball, and this edge room is very much like their wide receiver room for me in that it is so good. It's got some good depth to it. It's a weapon in and of itself, and Brian Flores is going to have a lot of fun using these different types of players in different types of scenarios. Start with Andrew Van Ginkel coming over from Miami. Big steal. He's the perfect guy for this type of defense where he can play some off-ball backer. He can rush after the passer. He's just a great all-around player. I do have Dallas Turner as the number 2 just because I think he is the better player. Now, it will be a very healthy rotation between Van Ginkel, Turner, and Jonathan Grenard. Jonathan Grenard got paid, so he's going to be seeing the field too. I think that there's a lot of situations this year where all 3 of those guys are going to be on the field. I think Gabriel Murphy, somebody that they picked up, he's a very underrated player. Bo Richter's another one, very underrated player in these scenarios. They got a 5-man depth here for this edge rush. That's so great. Now, they are tied for 14th because the high-end abilities aren't really there. Like Van Ginkel's not exactly a high-end number 1. He's sort of like a middle-of-the-pack number 1, and then you get 2 high-end number 2s there in Turner and Grenard. So, they could get better, but as Dallas Turner develops, as they find more roles for him, you put all 3 of those guys on the field, you'll be hard-pressed to be able to figure out who's coming, who's blocking, because Turner can drop back too. Once you get to the run game, they're tied for 13th. Again, between the 3 of them, a great group. Gabriel Murphy even gets a shout out there. He's a solid depth piece. He'd be a good number 2 on most teams in terms of his ability against the run. But I think it's really going to be a healthy 3-man rotation here, where Brian Flores is going to do what Brian Flores does, which is mix and match and disguise and everything. And I think he's got the skill sets here, particularly with these 2 I featured, Dallas Turner and Andrew Van Ginkel, to mix things up a bit. I think Jonathan Grenard, you're looking at more of a traditional defensive end. He's going to go out and rush the passer, which is great. I think Van Ginkel and Turner are going to give him a little bit more flexibility, which is why I do feel by the end of the season, these will probably be the 2 guys who see the most snaps out of this entire group, while Jonathan Grenard is a close 3rd place. But I think as the season goes on, you're probably going to see him more as a pure edge rusher more so than see him here in the run game. I think that this is an opportunity where they'll be able to work in Gabriel Murphy, even Andre Carter. I think you'd see himself making the team because of his ability here to be a depth piece and help these two really great edge rushers, the three great edge rushers, come off the field in some of those early down situations. And then you move into the interior defensive line, and this is where it gets nutty. It's a hot and cold front four here. They're tied for 28th. Jerry Tillery and Harrison Phillips. I mean, not a lot of depth. The depth is very concerning. Now, I know Jonah Williams is going to see the field. I disagree with that. Though his veteran status, his ability to play 3-4 end, along with some more traditional interior defensive line roles, that's going to help him find his spot on the team and find his roster spot. Against the run, again, still tied for 28th. They do get a little bit more flexibility here. You know, having Jerry Tillery, though, as your number one interior defensive lineman is not ideal. If he was your number two, fine. But to have Harrison Phillips, you're going to have Jacqueline Roy here. Jonah Williams, this is where you'll see him come in on these early down situations. Taki Tiamani, I think could make the team because of his ability here on early downs. Levi Drake Rodriguez gets a lot of hype. I mean, okay. I'm not blown away by him by any means. But you're just, for me, a little too squishy here, which does hurt the defensive ends and the edge rushers that you have. Maybe Jerry Tillery is just a late bloomer. And you get, some middle of the pack or like even low end number one interior defensive lineman play out of him in comparison to the rest of the league. That would raise them up a little bit, but I would be very concerned about their ability up the middle here to get after passers and to stop the run, at least early in the season, as they're working in the appropriate combination of guys in those roles. But they might be able to get bailed out by this linebacker group here. They are tied for 6th in linebacker coverage. It's Ivan Pace Jr. It's Blake Cashman. Very surprised Blake Cashman left Houston. He really is he's that example of that guy who came around late. Had some health issues early in his career, but now that he's healthy, he's good to go. He had a career year last year in Houston. He's your quintessential 3-down linebacker. I think Ivan Pace could qualify as that guy as well. I think you got your one linebacker 2 right here out of these two guys. And you got some okay depth, at least in the linebacker coverage area with Asamoah and Dallas Gant, the rookie. I like those two guys to be depth pieces on passing downs. You don't want Brian Asamoah on the field on early downs in those rushing situations. But I think he could be a healthy substitution in this area. I think that's how he will find his way to make the team, despite being kind of passed over by Ivan Pace and Blake Cashman. Ivan Pace, what a player. I think a lot of people were surprised at what happened to him in the draft. I know people thought really highly of him. People thought he was the best interior or off-ball linebacker in the draft. Turns out those people were probably right. A lot of people in the NFL are kicking themselves about not picking him up. I'm looking at him the same way I'm sort of looking at what happened to Jeremiah Trotter Jr. this year, where it's like, I don't know where the league fell off with him, but I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. Too bad he's on Philadelphia. Even when we get to the linebackers against the run here, Blake Cashman, great year for that in Houston. I think he's going to fill in this role here. I think Ivan Pace, not as good, but still the second best. I think Dallas Gant, look out for him. That rookie, look out for him to make the team here, because I think he can be a really good substitution piece. But this linebacker group in particular, I think, is what's going to bail out the lack of upside that interior defensive line has. This is where you make up for that. Having a player like Blake Cashman, who's a tremendous athlete, having Ivan Pace, who can play in both aspects of the game, and I think Now, coming into his second year, I think you're going to see him develop more. At least you hope to see him develop these two aspects of his games more. And you, for all intents and purposes, by the end of the year, could be looking at one of the best 1-2 punches at linebacker in the league, up there with C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. You could get them into that next tier of linebacker, because it's very rare you're going to find a linebacker group, 13th and then 6th in two different aspects of the game with the same two linebackers. That is what makes an elite level linebacker group, is having that type of flexibility and not having to worry about getting guys off the field because, oh man, it's a certain situation. Something that you did have with Brian Asamoah, where it's like, man, it's a running situation. We got to get him off the field. Who do we put in? You're very comfortable throwing Ivan Pace, Blake Cashman out there. You get Josh Metellus, who we'll get to when we talk about defensive backs, coming down, playing 8th man in the box. You're very comfortable with that group staying on the field as much as possible. And then sort of just sit, and then really being able to focus situationally on, okay, we're taking Ivan Pace out for this play. It's definitely going to be a pass. But Metellus goes on the field, or if we want to get a little bigger, we'll put Asamoah on. And then we're okay. Or it's a running situation. Okay, we got to take Cashman out. All right, Dallas Gant, let's go, buddy. Get out there. Let's get in the backfield, take down a running back. Shoot the gap, get the running back. There's so much flexibility that Brian Flores has here because of this linebacker group, and I expect this linebacker group by the end of the year to be ranked even higher in probably both of these categories. Now here's an issue. It's the cornerback room, and it's the 29th ranked cornerback room for me. You got Mekhi Blackmon, Byron Murphy, Andrew Booth, who for me are the top three guys. I would like this group a whole lot more if Mekhi Blackmon was your number 2, and then Murphy or Andrew Booth were your number 3. But that's just not the case, and this is where a lot of reliance on that edge room, performing at a high level to make things easier on the back end here for this group, is going to be huge. It's really going to be huge to how well this defense produces throughout the year. It is a glaring issue. This issue is worse than what they got in the interior defensive line. I think you can hide your interior defensive line issues a lot better than your cornerback issues. That's for sure. In terms of depth, they got Shaq Griffin, who's going to be competing for snaps as well. Andrew Booth, I think, is the one who's in a weird situation here, because you'll put Shaq Griffin on the outside with Mekhi Blackmon. And then you got Byron Murphy, who can play there in the slot. Dwight McGlothern, I think, undercover there, sneaky. Caleb Evans, I think, just not working out here. So I think you got 5 corners here where you're just hoping someone breaks out. You're hoping that the front 4, particularly the Van Ginkel, Turner, Grenard situation, that those guys perform so well, allows these guys on the outside to play super instinctual and aggressive and lead to turnovers. Keep things simple from other offenses. Not a lot of double moves that are going to catch them, and build their confidence that way. When you get to the safety group, they're okay here in pass coverage, tied for 21st. Harrison Smith and Cameron Bynum, those are your 2, traditional, quarters safeties. Josh Metellus, we see him there. He's going to play everywhere. He's going to be your, dime linebacker. He's going to be, coming in these early down situations, 8th man in the box. He does contribute really well. It's a 17th ranked DB run support group. He's a very well-rounded player. He's like a poor man's Jabril Peppers, which Jabril Peppers fits perfectly in this style of defense because he can play anywhere and play well anywhere, where it's now impossible for the offense to really figure out what it is he's even going to be doing. Is he blitzing? Is he covering the tight end? Is he covering the slot? Is he going to run outside and play a deep third? What is he going to do? It's very difficult to identify what the defense is going to be doing, even no matter where Josh Metellus lines up, and it will change everything around him. I do expect this to be a 3 safety group with Harrison Smith as well, because Harrison Smith, he's still, despite the aging and all that, he's still a good safety in the NFL. And I think that putting him in more situations, giving a strong pass rush in front of him, and good linebacker play in front of him, I think you can see some more high quality play out of him throughout the year this late in his career. I think Lewis Cine is on his last legs here. He's really going to have to step up. I would say particularly in pass coverage. Because they are tied for 21st here. They're sort of just they don't really have like a true star here. They are just a quote solid, probably overall middle of the pack safety room. So Lewis Cine comes in, if he plays great, as that deep third safety, making plays, running sideline to sideline with his hair on fire, that could raise this group up. But if he doesn't do that, if he's sort of just a meh player, then Jay Ward and Theo Jackson, who are, as good in certain aspects of the game or better in other ways, they'll be the ones that make the team, and it'll be a 5-man safety room. I could even see situations where maybe some of these depth guys here, like Joanne Williams or something, or even Shaq Griffin, for example, could find themselves as, quote, safety depth as well, especially, again, because of the way this defense is set up. You got a lot of positionless guys who are going to be expected to do a lot of different things at any given time. So you'll see corners playing safety and just as disguises here. So if you get one of those guys that are considered to be, quote, corners right now, stepping up and being able to play some of these safety roles or these safety responsibilities, that's just going to make things way harder on Lewis Cine. It could prove to be one of the big first-round blunders of the last couple of years. Now, the corners that they have, they aren't particularly great contributors in the run game. Again, middle of the pack. Not a liability. Really, the only liability is the interior defensive line. And then the DBs, the cornerbacks in particular, I would say. That's really where the Brian Flores scheme is going to be in charge of raising this group up the way that he did last year. I think overall, they don't have like the high-end talent like a Danielle Hunter, but I do think the edge room's better overall than it was last year. I think that they have a lot more depth in these key situations that they're going to be able to make up for some of the lack of high-end talent with talent that's not significantly lesser, but has more of a through line throughout a game and throughout the season with really good versatility from key guys. But overall, on a pure talent level, this is the 27th ranked defense. Pass defense, 25th in the league. The edge room and the linebackers are great. You're concerned about the interior. You're concerned about the defensive backs, particularly the corners. They're going to, again, the scheme's going to be very dependent on them. Rush defense, they are 24th. Overall, the 27th ranked defense in terms of talent level. Now, again, the coaching staff plays a huge role in raising this group up. So overall, they are the 18th ranked team in the NFL for me. Tied for 16th in coaching, 13th offense, 27th defense. That coaching staff, though, particularly Brian Flores, is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting on that defense and make guys perform statistically a lot better than maybe their current talent level dictates. And there you have it, my number 18 team in my 2024 NFL Deep Dive Series, the Minnesota Vikings. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you made it this far, hit the like and right there, the thumbs up button, and leave a comment in the comment section below about things you agreed with and what you disagreed with. Subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of the future videos. There's the series on either side of my head, and holy crap, I can talk fast. Maybe I should be an auction guy, and I'll see you guys next time.